Welcome to the PHP CRUD tutorial using Bootstrap 5. In this tutorial, I'm going to use PDO and I will also use the object-oriented programming way to create our CRUD tutorial example. What is CRUD? CRUD stands for create, read, update, delete, which is the four common operation. So the final project will be like this. Here we have a form that we write something inside it and we put the contact number and we click create the contact. In this tutorial, I'm going to create a contact number book here. The first one, the name and the contact number. We can also edit here, which is the update, and we can also delete a record like this. Without further ado, let's get started. First, we will going to create a database. We name it CRUD. After creating the database, now we have our database created. Next, we will create a table called the contacts. Here, create table contacts, ID with auto increment and full name, and the contact name column, which is 16 character bytes, and the ID is the primary key. After that, we insert 4 records for testing. Now our table is created, our database is also created. Let's open the structure and let's open the table. As you can see here, it is fully the table has some data. After this one, we go to the Google and write download Bootstrap 5, and the first link will take us to this site. Here we can download the Bootstrap 5. So here we click on download. I already downloaded this file, so I'm not going to download again. After downloading this one, we will have a zip file. After extracting, we will have these two files. Here we open this one. As you can see here, we have many files, many different files, but we need the bootstrap.min.css. From here, I will copy the file, and in our editors, we have opened the folder amazing.php. We can also see here we have our folder amazing.php. Inside this one, I create a folder called CRUD, and inside this folder, I'm going to create another file called Bootstrap. Inside this Bootstrap folder, I'm going to create another folder called CSS in order to organize things very well. Inside this one, I'm going to paste the bootstrap.min.css. Now, next we need to copy the bootstrap.js file. So inside the Bootstrap distribution 5, we have the bootstrap bundle.js, which has all the related JavaScript library for the Bootstrap. So here we have the minified version. We will copy the minified version and we put it inside this folder. We need to create it and put it inside the another folder called JS, and inside this one we paste this file. So now we created these folders. As you can see, we come back to the editor. As you can see, we have our folder created here. When we open this one, we have the Bootstrap, we have the CSS inside with the bootstrap min.css and bootstrap bundle.min.js. Right now we have the Bootstrap library here. Next, we are going to create our index file. We create a PHP file. We name it index.php, which will be the main file for our project. When someone visits our site, it will definitely open this folder. After this one, we need to create our very first basic page. I created a simple web page. Now let's link the Bootstrap. Now we link the Bootstrap, as you can see here, from inside the folder Bootstrap, CSS, bootstrap.main.js. We need to use the link tag, and here rel, style sheet, and media screen. So our Bootstrap is here. We linked it here, and next we will going to link the JS file. Next we link the JS file. Here we write script and we give an attribute source, and inside this one we will give the Bootstrap folder, the JS folder, and inside that one we have the Bootstrap bundle.bin.js. Now it should be enough to link the Bootstrap library to our project. Now let's create a div, and we give it a class of container. These classes are from Bootstrap, so it will just create a simple container. Inside this one we create another div. We give the class raw for this one, and inside this one we now can give a title for this project. Next I'm going to give it an h2, and inside this one I will put the title here. So from here we go to the browser, and from here we write amazing PHP and the folder CRUD. Inside this one right now you can see our application is running and our project is running, and as you can see here we have our title. We open the inspect, and from here we can check whether our Bootstrap file is linked or not. So from here we go to here and open it in a new tab. As you can see it is loaded, so we are sure our Bootstrap is linked to our project. Next we will give it this h2 a padding of 4. So here Bootstrap 5 has a class called p4, and we give this padding here. Now let's check again. As you can see, the padding is giving to this the title. Next we will create another div. Now we created this div. We give the class container. Next we will give the next div class raw, which create a raw, and we give the next div a class cart, and we will give also cool dash md -12 to take all the space here. So in here we write something, just we will write by home, save it, and now let's open it in the browser. As you can see here we have a basic cart or a basic structure here to put everything inside that one. I will give this div an ID of wrapper. So here I will give it an ID of wrapper, and now as we have this simple page, we will use it as a template. So in order to use that one, I will click on the CRUD here, the CRUD in the directory, and create another file. I call it header.php, and I will create another file and name it footer.php. So here we do not have anything, so I will use this file here. From here everything will be the same. So from here I will cut everything and paste it inside the header, and the rest of the page will go to the footer. I will cut from here and paste it here. Now we close the header and footer, and I will use the PHP include function to include those files. So I'm using the PHP. Now we have our header file linked and our footer file linked also. So it should be the same as before. Now I will refresh the page. As you can see, nothing is changed. It is as before. So in this way I'm using it as a template for other files that I will create later in this tutorial. Now I create a div here to give a space, and I create another div here. I give it a class clearfix to clear the space, and here I created a div and I created a button here. I created using the link and give it the address of add.php. Bootstrap has classes like btn, btn large, btn info. So I'm just giving this simple one, btn info, and add contact here. As we can also see our result inside this PHP editor. From here, I will make it a little bit small. As you can see, we added a button here. We can also just give the header or the footer a little bit more space. So I will create some padding here. And for this one, I'm using a P3 padding to give it a little bit padding. As you can see here, we have a padding around this box. So now we have created this button, and we link it to this file. We will create this file later. Next, we will going to use another div to list or show all our contacts inside that one. Below this button, I will create a table, a simple table. So to create that one, I will create a div, and after that one, I will create a simple table. Now we created our table. We need to give it a class, or I can use it a table strip. It will show the draws differently. Now next, I will give it a header part. As you can see, I created a tr and table row, and then the th, the header. We have the number, the full name, the contact, and I give it a th with a span 2 with a text center using the class center, and name it action. As you can see, the result here. And next, I will give the table the class border here. As you can see, the borders are given around this table. Next, we will need to create the class that return data from the database. From here, next I will go to this CRUD folder. Inside this one, I will create a file, name it db, and I also create a class inside this one. I will name it CRUD. It doesn't matter, you just can create a simple file like this. So from inside the editor, I created this one, but you can create it by simply on the folder by creating a new file. So I created these two files. Let's use this file to connect to the database. I created 4 simple variables. The DB host is localhost, the root, and the password is empty, and the database name is CRUD. Next, I will use the try and catch here. I will try to connect to the database. If it is not successful, it should give a message here. So I'll close this one here. Right now, we have the DB connection here, new PDO, MySQL, and we have the host here, the database name, the database user, and the database password. And we set the attribute to ETR error mode and error mode exception here. So in this way, we will connect to the database. If we successfully connect to the database, it will create a connection object to this dbcon variable. Next, I will connect to this class that we created here, the CRUD class here. Now I included the CRUD class here, and I created a new object of this class. Let's include this file also here. So I come here and include the db.php also, which includes the CRUD class also here. Now I created a simple property, a private property called db, which will contain the database object, and I create the construct using the construct function, and I will give the database connection to this construct here, and it will set this to the database. As you can see here, we created an object of this class. So this object connection will be passed here. From here we will set this to this DB connection. Next, I'm going to create a class that will list the contacts. So I will create a function. Now that we create this function, it will get a query, and after that one it will prepare the query and execute the statement. If the result is more than one row, so this row count function will count the number of rows returned from the database. If it is more than 0, it will open a while loop. Every time it will fetch a row from the result set. This fetch assoc attribute will return the associative array. We close the PHP tag and open this PHP tag here, and we had the first part, the ID, and then we put inside this tr. We create a tr every time a row is returned. We create a tr, and inside that one we create the tds or the table cells, and we use the print to echo the row ID, the column ID, the column full name, and the column contact number. We have two more columns here. I will put the edit and delete button inside these two columns. Let's check till now what happened to this our code. Let's check it, the list of contact, whether this function returned the contacts or not. So we have this function like this. We will call it inside our index page. We go to the index page, we close this one, we go to the index page in here. Now, because we included these two files and the connection and the CRUD classes also included, we come to this part, and in here we will use to call the contact list function. Now we created this query here, select all from contacts, and I passed this query to this function list contacts CRUD.list contacts, because we already created this object inside the DB file and we include it here, so we can use it here, and we use this notation here, to call this CRUD object list contact function. Now let's check it in the browser. As you can see, all of the contacts are listed here. Now next, let's add the edit and delete button. I will delete this too and paste it this code. So here we created a link, we give it the class btninfo, we give the attribute href, the edit.php, and from here we write edit id equal, and we put this id inside this one. So it will be something like edit.php and edit id, and then equals some number 1 2 3 4, something like that. So here we have our edit link, and we have here our delete link. So here I will create this edit file and delete file also in later. Now let's check it out again in the browser. As you can see, we'll refresh, and you can see we have here the edit and we have here the delete. As I hover my mouse over the button, you can see in the left bottom part that it is giving the address of this edit page, which we haven't created yet. So if we click here, nothing will show up. Now we have listed our contacts here, the name and the contacts here. Now let's work on the adding contact functionality. I start by creating 3 new files. Inside the CRUD folder, I will create a new file called add, and then I will create also another file called edit. Next I will create another file called delete. So we have the C in CRUD and U and D functionalities in a CRUD functionality. So I will close this one. I will focus on the add page. So in order to create the add functionality, we will first use our template. Our template was like this, so we need to copy here and paste it here. As you can see, we included the header, and now we will also include the footer. We will have this thing in all our files. So I will copy this one and also paste it inside the edit file and also inside the delete file. I will save it. Next, let's go back to the add page. So I close these two files. Now I created a div named class container, and then this form with a method attribute of post, and then I created a table here for decoration. I give it a class of table and then table bordered. So here, as you can see, we added this code here. Next, we will going to add the full name part. So I will create here the full name part. We created tr, inside tr we created td, the name, and then we have this input here, type text, and name is given the full name. We give a class form control to give it some decorations and some style. Now let's check this part here from the browser. When I click now on the add, as you can see here we have a form here. Next we will going to add and the contact part. Also we create another tr. As we can see here, we have now the contact here. So in one column we have the names, and in another column we have the form elements. Next we will going to add a button to this form. So I will create this tr here. Now we give it a cool span of 2, and inside this one we created a button type submit, and we have these classes, and we will give a name of btn save and create new contact inside this one. We will also create a link for going back to the list page also. So let's check it in browser. As you can see, we have created these two buttons. Now we write the create function here. We created a function called create, and it takes two parameters, the full name and the contact number. Then we created a query here inside this try and catch block. Here we write insert into the contact, and we give the name of the columns. Here we binded the values. Here in this way, if we bind the values in this way, it will prevent from SQL injection attacks. So we prepared the query, which is this one. We put it inside this one. Now we binded this full name here with the full name parameter from here, and the contact number with the contact parameter here, and then execute the statement. If it executed well, then if it executed successfully, then we have no problems. It will return true. Otherwise, it will return false. So with this one, let's call this function inside this add button here, which is created here. And after that one, we should have either of these options in the URL. So next I will go here and refresh here. This time I will write the details and create it. As you can see here, it's showing that it is inserted. Based on this one, we will show related messages. So when we go back to here, as you can see, we have a new record here. So let's go back to here to fix the messages shown in the URL. So we open up this add file, and after this one we will going to check for the parameters passed to the URL. Now we check whether if inserted parameter is passed to the URL or not. If yes, then this code should be run, which should give that the user the message that it is successfully inserted and a link to the home page. And if not, we need to use another else if here. So I will use an else if here. Else if failure is set, then show this part which showed an error message to the user. Let's check whether how this code works. So I will open up here. I will write something, and I will give it a contact number. And after creating this one, as you can see, it's showing that it's successfully inserted to the database. And as you can see here, we have the new contact here. Next, we will going to work on how to edit the page. When we click here, as you can see, nothing is shown here. Next, here we need to bring the data from the database and then put it inside the form. And after that, we will need to edit the form. To do that, we open the edit folder here, and we need to create a form for returning the data. Before the form, we will going to create a new function called the get by ID. This will bring a new contact based on the ID. It will bring the contact by ID. As you can see, we created this function get by ID and passing the ID. Then we will create a query here, select all from the contacts, and then we bind the ID here with the ID sent to this one, and it will return the contact. So we created this function. Now let's create the form inside the edit function, the edit file. Now we get the edit ID here. So if we go to here, as we can see here in the URL, it is a parameter named edit underscore ID, which is passed the ID of the record. So here we will get using the get func and get super global. So here we get the ID and we passed it to this function which we had here, the get by ID. And after passing, it will bring the array. We use the extract function to change array into variables. So if we have 2-3 columns, which is ID, the full name, and the contact number, it will generate three variables to the array into 3 variables. So next we will create a div here. As you can see, we create a div here to clear fix or to clear the space. Then we create a container inside this one. I will create a post method form with post method. Inside this one, I will create a table to decor. Next, we add our first element, which is the full name here. Now we have the full name inside the value property. So value attribute is the value that will show a value inside this input element here. Now we have this CRUD function here called. It will change the array to the variables. Now we have this, one of the key is the full name, so it will create this variable. So now we have this form, the table, and we have this element with the data retrieved from the database. Now let's refresh the page again. As you can see here, first name, and inside this value came from the database. If I change this edit value, it should change it to something else. So if I go back here and I click here, as you can see, it will change it and it will bring the data from the database. Next, we will create a second row here. We create a contact number, and we have this contact variable, which is also from here. And next we will create two buttons here. We created a table row. Inside that one we have this TD, and we have this button here, which is the update contact. I will delete this one, which is extra. So now the name of this btn is btn update, and we have a link here named cancel. So let's check out in the browser. As you can see, we have all the data populated from the database, and we have the contact and the button update contact, and we have the cancel here. So when we cancel, we go back to this save page and we go here. Now the data is populated. It's time to update the database. Now let's go to here, and here I will write some code to check whether this btn, this button update is clicked or not. In order to do that, let's open here, and I will open a new standard PHP tag and close that one. I'm just using it to differentiate between the different code I'm written. Now I'm going to check it here using this one. If it is clicked, then it should get the values. We get the ID from the URL from here, which is 28. Then we get the full name from the form and the contact from the form also. Next, we are going to update the database. So if it is updated successfully, it should show this message, which is the div and the message. We will put it inside this message. If it is not, then the else part of this if should be run, and it should show the message here. Next, we will going to show the message. So we get the message here, and after this one, before this container or form container in here, we write some other code. Here we created another div. Inside this one, we check if the message is set, then it should show the message. Now let's check it whether it's working or not. So here we are inside the edit page, and we write something here and update the contact. As you can see, it's showing that it's giving an error because we haven't defined the update function. So the function is working, and the message is also working, but before that we need to create this function in order to fully show our results. So let's go to here, and let's go to the CRUD class, and next we will create the function called update. Now created the function public function update, and it takes 3 parameters: ID, full name, and contact number. As you can see here in the above, the update we will pass the ID, the full name, and the contact number. Based on that, it should update the database. Now we create a try catch part. If it is not successfully updated, so it should give us the message and return false. Based on that one, it will show this message. Now next we will create the statement. As you can see here, we use the update contact set full name to this one and contact name to this contact, and where ID equal to this, we will bind in these 3 values. Next, so here I bind the first parameter, the second and the third parameter, and then execute the query, and if everything is fine, then it should return true. Now let's go back to the browser and refresh again. As you can see, it's saying that the code updated successfully. As you can see, if you go back to here, you can see the name of that record is changed. If we do it again, it should update the record. As you can see, now we have the edit functionality here. The last part of our project is the delete. So when I click here right now, it takes us to the delete.php with the delete ID of something, but it is nothing is here. So in the delete part, we first retrieve the record and show to the user and ask the user whether he or she want to delete the record. We go to the editor and we will open the delete file. Right now it does not have anything. Let's write some code. Here we created a div with a class clearfix, and then we created another div with a class container. We will check whether if this delete parameter is passed to the URL. If it is passed, then we need to check here. If it is passed, we create a table here. Next, we will create a tr here. So let's check out here to see each step. Now we have this header here. Next, we will get this delete ID, which is the parameter passed to this parameter, and pass it to the get by ID function from the CRUD here, and we will get the contact. After that one, we will show all the contact values inside the TD here. So let's check. As you can see, now we have the value here. Next, we need to check whether we will give an option to the user to whether want to delete this data or not. So we create another div here. Inside, we will create a paragraph to decor. Next, we use this parameter delete ID. If it is passed, then this form should be shown. Inside this form, we have an input type hidden, and we give the name ID, and it should contain the ID of this record, which we get from here. So if this is run, then this contact will be available, and we can put the value inside this input element. In this way, we are somehow passing the ID from the form. And then we have the button yes with the name btndl we will use to delete the records. So we have the form here. When someone click yes, it should process the deletion functionality. Otherwise, if the user click on no, then it should take us back to the index.php page. So here we refresh. As you can see here, we have this one. Next, we need to add an else to this one. So here we have this index here. I will delete this one. So we have back to the index, which is the link here. When we update, when we delete a record, it will take us back here. Instead of this yes no button, it will show this back to index button. Next, we will need to write some code. When this form is clicked, it should delete the function and show the message to the user. We go to the upper part of our page. In here, we will write the code for the deletion. Now it will check for the btndl, which is here. Here, the btndl. If it is clicked, then it should get the ID and call the delete function. So we need to have our delete function inside this CRUD class and take us back to this page, which is the delete.php. This time it passed the delete parameter. Next, let's create the delete functionality here. So after this update, we will create the delete functionality here. The delete functionality is very simple. Here it take an ID, a parameter, and it will match this, bind this one, and execute the query. So it will delete from the contacts with the ID this one. Just be careful to, when you are deleting something, you need to give this where part to the function. Otherwise, it will delete all of your record in the table. Now that we created this function, we come back here, and when we are redirected to this address and with this parameter, we need to show some message to the user based on this parameter. We created this div here and another div here. We open the tag here just before this code. Now let's check whether if this parameter is passed to the URL or not. So right now we do not have it here. We have the delete ID, not the delete message here. If it is passed, means the record is deleted in here. If the record is deleted, this parameter will be passed, and here we will check this one. If it is yes, then it will show the success message. Otherwise, it will ask the user whether he or she want to remove the contact or not. So now let's check it in the browser whether our functionality is working or not. Now I will refresh here. It is giving this message whether I want to remove the record or not, which is this part of the else part here, which is this parameter is not passed to the URL, so this part is shown to the user. Now if I click on no, it will take me to the home page, but if I click yes, it will delete the record. As you can see, it is saying that success, contact is deleted. So here this part is run, and because the btn deal is clicked, it got the ID and delete the record and showed this message to the user. Now we finished the delete functionality. Also, we go back to the index page. As you can see, we do not have the record here. We delete this record also. As you can see, now we do not have the record. So we are left with 4 records. Leave your comments below, and don't forget to like and share our channel.